All right, we're going. First official, the BassHeads podcast. Just a little introduction. We've been wanting to do this for a couple years now and just kind of been dragging our feet. So finally jumped into it. As a little introduction, my name's Tony Lee. I'm founder of the BassHeads. Founded a few years ago, BassHeads Facebook group, and now a website. So now we're trying to jump into the podcast world, just kind of talking about everything Minnesota bass fishing.
Tony is also widely known for being the guy who only throws a black and blue jig.
Yes, that is true. Or a DT10 crank, right?
Yeah,
in one color.
In one color.
In one color. Everybody knows.
Let's be real about that.
And he's pretty good at it.
One color.
If you just were smart, you would just fill your boat with those and gain like 5 miles an hour.
That is true. That is true. But I got a couple buddies on here that will be with us most of the episodes. We're going to try to do this probably every other week or so, and throughout the summer, and then get into winter. It might be an every other week or every week thing, just because we need something to talk about in the winter. But I'll let everybody kind of go around, introduce themselves. And then we'll kind of go from there and talk about what we're going to be going over with these podcasts. Bart, you're up.
Sure. I'm Adam Bartusek. For those of you who don't know me, everybody basically calls me Bart. I guess I don't really know. I'm kind of just a jack of all trades, I guess I would say, in the fishing industry. I do a lot of videography and photography. I help out on the tournament scene a lot. People probably see me help a lot with the Minnesota Bass Nation Team Trail. I've helped kind of with that for the last 3 or 4 years, have fished it since its first year. I do all the videos for the Classic Bass Champions Tour now. I'm basically just a bass fishing junkie. So if you see me around doing stuff, that's kind of what I'm doing. Then in the winter,
he's got his fingers pretty much in everything. He's a part of every little thing,
Yeah.
So why not bring him into this?
Yeah. I'm here. Unfortunately, it seems like I'm kind of everywhere now, but it's fun. I like doing it. There's been a lot of good things happening in this state fishing wise, and it's cool to be a part of it all. Like, I remember, I was telling Tony, I think about this a few weeks ago, but I remember 4 or 5 years ago when most derbies were 20 to 30 boats, even the ones that were supposed to be big, and now everything's filled up or capping out $10,000, $15,000. It's cool to see Minnesota back on the mainstream of tournament bass fishing. I would think that's not very typical around the upper Midwest, I would say. So it's been cool to see the surgence and everything. I think Tony starting BassHeads has been a really big lead of that, kind of having a community and a place for us all to get together. So, it's been sweet to see. I'm excited about this. It'll be nice to be able to talk local derbies, everything that's going on, and get to know more people in the state that people don't necessarily know.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back, I think it was funny because right when the BassHeads started, 2018, that was kind of one of the big controversies that was always brought up, was no big bass tournaments in the state of Minnesota. And that was just in 2018. So like you said, it's grown a lot even since then. So
back in 2018, I think basically the only tournaments that were over 50 to 70 boats were probably the Minnetonka Classic and the Jude. Anyone think of anything else? I can't think of anything else that was ever over 50 boats.
Right. Right. All right.
Yeah. Happy to be here.
Absolutely. Brent, you're up.
Yeah. So I'm Brent Carlson. I've been in the fishing industry for my whole life. Basically, I started when I was 16 at actually Holiday Sports back in the day, if any of you are old enough to know that. But I've been around. So I've done retail, I've done sales. Currently, I'm a sales rep for a Don Coffee Company. I sell Shimano, G Loomis, Striker, Aquaview, Owner hooks, a bunch of different stuff. So we have 16, 18 different brands that we handle throughout the country. So that's kind of what I do. And like I said, I've been fishing my whole life. I'm excited to do this because this is basically brought out of, let's face it, it's sheer boredom. There's a 1.5 feet of snow outside still, and we're going crazy. So I think if we were sitting here in June 10th, we may not have started this right now, but that's all right. We're going to start it, get it rolling, and go from there. So it should be great. I'm looking forward to meeting all you guys out there, getting feedback from you guys, seeing what you guys want to listen to, what you guys want to hear, who guests you guys want to have on, stuff like that. I mean, we have a pretty good platform of guys. I mean, we have 7,500 members on BassHeads,
Right.
so we have a good audience for you guys to give us feedback and stuff. So it should be pretty good.
Yep. Awesome. Nick.
Brent, I have to ask, this holiday tackle or whatever, was this like a part of holiday gas stations, or was this something way before?
Yes. So it was.
I need answers on this.
Yeah.
So I need to know. I'm actually genuinely curious.
For you millennials. So this is Holiday Sports was owned by Holiday gas stations, right? The Ericssons, who own Holiday gas stations and all that, owned Holiday Sports. And it was back, I think there was probably like 4 or 5 locations, right? And it was back in the day, it was like Burger Brothers, Holiday Sports, and then Gander Mountain was out there as well. But Holiday Sports was, man, it was as OG as sporting goods got. I mean, you'd sit there. When I say we would sell a tower of like Mercury Quicksilver oil on the Saturday in May, I'm not joking. It'd be like an 8-foot tall tower that we would build, and that pallet of oil would get sold in a weekend. It was crazy. We'd back in the heyday of Mille Lacs walleye fishing, we'd sell a dump table of number 6 red Gamakatsu walleye hooks. I mean, we used to blow through the puck. Now there's, obviously internet plays a role in it and all that. There's a lot more competition out there, but that was back in the day. It was the place to go. I mean, it was, this is long before bass fishing was cool or more popular in Minnesota, but man, it was some stuff used to go on there, right? I mean, we used to do overnights and we'd hit golf balls out on the 694. So if anybody in the year 2000 ever got hit by a golf ball on 694, I apologize. I'll give you the phone number of the guy who did it. It wasn't me, but we used to do it. We used to get away with some stuff back in the day. That was before cameras and technology came around and kind of edited everybody, but and people got smarter about business. But yeah, it was.
Where was that located at?
So the one I was at was in Fridley. So where that so Fridley and 694 and University.
Oh yeah,
a hibachi grill and a Cub Foods there now.
Yep.
It used to be Gander too, but it switched from Holiday Sports to Gander Mountain, and then Gander got bought out, the whole deal, or whatever, right? But that was probably one of my I have a handful of stories from that location, but 2 that stick out. Number 1, we were remodeling in the spring. We were putting up Northland jigs on the wall, and so we shared a wall with the liquor store. It was Holiday Liquor, and though there was too much weight and the whole wall fell down. Like when I say a whole wall, I'm talking a 15-foot tall wall that was 100 feet long, and the whole thing just dominoed
Did it fall
down.
to the liquor store side or
no? It fell. It didn't damage any alcohol, but it damaged some
there we
fishing
go.
rods, right? So priorities. Yeah, it was back before people thought of stuff. So, and then my other one is there was a guy who stole a knife. Well, in order to steal the knife, he opened those hard plastic package, and so he opened it, funny enough, with like a razor blade or something like that, and he didn't get away with it, but there was a trail of blood throughout the store. The guy cut himself trying to open this package, and there was
to get a knife.
Gut shot a deer, just like I think he went that way, right? So it was pretty obvious the way where the guy went. So he didn't get his knife, but it was fun.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Nice. All right, thanks, Brent. Nick, you're up.
All right. Yeah, excited to be on here. So Nick McDermott is my full name. So I grew up on a lake, small lake in Maple Grove, and really got into bass fishing on my pontoon. I had an old junky pontoon that started half the time, but I got out, and I think it was actually I got hooked on bass fishing when we got Cabela's and Rogers. And I went up there, and shout out to Nate Nipper if he watches this. He actually, I had no idea what I was doing, but he pointed me over to the DT 16s, like the first time they came out, the originals, with like the Sure Set hooks on them. And he's like, yeah, just go out there, find a weed line and chuck this DT. and went out, threw my anchor out. I had to like aim where I wanted to go based on like a canopy of a boat lift, and I just started throttling them, and it was like obviously hooked from there. But it's been growing ever since. I love for fishing. I haven't been like directly in the industry, but I've done some photography, kind of a hobby, done some like side work for some companies, but stayed in touch with, a lot of the Minnesota anglers that way. And then I know Tony and Brent for many, many years, Bart as well. But Brent, I think I met you at first time at Cabela's as well, right?
Gosh, I don't know. It was either that or the old mystery tournaments that those guys put on. Yeah, you did when you were with North Star, and you did the mystery tournaments. Those were a riot.
Right. Yep.
Those didn't Thorn Brothers do those too?
Thorn Brothers.
Yeah. So they took over. So originally it was, gosh, who was running it? It wasn't Frankie's, but there was a couple guys running it, and then Thorn Brothers kind of took it over. So the first 2 years was kind of makeshift, but no offense to anybody running it, but those 2 years were unedited, right? And it was just great. It was just total no politics, anything like that. It was unsponsored. You didn't have to answer anybody. You just showed up and drew a name out of a hat and went fishing. That was in its purest form. That was awesome.
Right. I want that back too. And when Thorn Brothers took it over, I never did get to fish any of those, but they had some sweet prizes too. Like the smallest 5 fish limit would get a prize.
Yeah.
And they would pick a exact weight.
Yeah.
If you got closest to that weight, you got the prize or something like that.
And Brent and I'm spacing your partner's name.
Dietz.
Teacher Dietz, because he had all summer off and he could go pre-fish 5 days a week. But you guys stole all of our money.
Better.
I remember winning one thing that year, and it was for like the median weight or something. I was like right in the middle, and we won a reel, and that was the highlight of my year. Because you stole it.
You won a reel. We won like 3 tournaments and still only won like $80. So it wasn't anything major.
Yeah. Speaking of guests, we should probably have Dietz on sometime.
We should. Yeah. He doesn't.
Dude's full of knowledge, man.
He's full of knowledge. I mean, he'll probably go off on a tangent about like Call of Duty or cats or disc golf. But yeah, that's fine.
For sure.
That's we all know those guys.
We can open it up at the end for that.
We all know those guys in our history that like, gosh, you could have been like, and they were right. You like if they stuck with it and stuff like that. Like he was a special angler and he just kind of understood stuff. But you get down the path and stuff happens or whatever. But he was one of those guys like he can catch them. So I think I talk to him still from time to time, and he fishes a couple times a year. But if anybody wants a mid 2000s bass cat with a 250 racing on it that goes like 80 miles an hour, that's probably got like 5 hours on it in the last 5 years. I know a guy.
Right. For sure.
Boat sold.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna throw Tony under the bus. He was like, "Yeah, I want those mystery tournaments back." I'm like, "BassHeads weeknight series."
We should. It would be awesome. Wasn't for the permit thing though. Like there's ways around it.
We'll just have a group of like 24 guys underground, dark, send the money to Tony, and then we all meet at like a parking lot and like
for sure
St. Cloud or St. Paul or something. Tony St. Cloud.
Right.
No, St. Paul or something, Minneapolis. Right. And it's got to be just a sketchy alleyway.
Yeah.
And
we didn't need a permit, right?
I'll drive there immediately.
No,
you can work around it.
I think so. Yeah. Have a list of like 15 lakes.
The only problem would be we'd have to have a list of like 15 lakes from Minneapolis, and they'd all have to be about an hour to an hour 20 away because there's probably a weeknight derby already happening on the ones with 30 minutes.
Right. Everybody shows up to one of a lake. There's a derby going on. Everybody trailers to the next one.
Yeah, that's the only problem with the whole mystery thing now is there's 582 weeknight leagues taking up the 100 lakes around.
Right.
Well, then we just do Tuesday during the day.
Yeah, sure. We can do that.
Right?
Tuesday during the day.
Yeah,
right.
Don't tell my boss.
For sure. Right. No, thanks for introducing yourselves, everybody. I'm just going to kind of go over what we're going to be talking about for the most part with this. I think basically just everything Minnesota bass fishing. We'll pull in some, national news, bass news and stuff, talk about some of the elite derbies if something crazy happens. We might even talk about the classic in this episode. But for the most part, all of us fish at least once a week. I'm in the Northeast Metro, Bart's in the South, Brent and Nick are in the West, so we'll be able to give some reports. With the BassHeads website now, I have a list of most of the tournaments. I think I've captured most of them. I'm sure there's still a bunch of clubs out there that I haven't listed on there, but for the most part, I have most tournaments, and I'm going to do my best to get results for most of those tournaments. It's going to be a tall task. There's like over 300 tournaments listed.
Yeah.
And
I was going to say the other thing is, Tony, if people haven't hit you up, if you got like a small club or like a weeknight league, especially, it would be good to hit him up and put him on there. Cause like, I know guys like myself who fish around in the Metro, like I will go look at a weeknight league list and be like, okay, these are the lakes getting hit. I'm not going there. Like,
right. No,
I
for
will
sure.
avoid it. So
Right.
that's a good reason to list them, because then we know where not to go.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. Throw me send me an email. It's mnbassheads@gmail.com. If you don't see your tournament on there or your tournament series, I'll get those on there right away. And like I said, I'm going to do my best to try to reach out to tournament directors to get like weights and, for those derbies. It's probably not going to happen. Let's be real, but I'll do my best. But, I think that's one of the things we're going to look at. Some of the bigger tournaments is hopefully once they're over, we bring in, the winners, have them as guests on this podcast to talk about what they did, how they caught them, and kind of do that throughout the summer. There's a ton of big tournaments now. You got the Champions Tour, you got the Team Trail, you got Blackfish, the Tonka Classic, the BassHeads Derby. There's a lot of big derbies that are going on throughout the whole year. It seems like almost every weekend or every week there's going to be a big derby going on. So it'll be fun to get some of these guys that win them on as guests to kind of dissect what they did.
Right. I'm gonna send you some fake tournaments, so maybe I can have a lake to myself for a Saturday. Like, I see 50 boats out here. You don't want to go.
There you go. It's
Sure.
kind of funny. I was getting made fun of the other week. I posted a picture of drinking Busch Light, and someone commented, they're like, you like high-end gear, you like your G Loomis, Shimano, and Mega Bass, and you're drinking Busch Light. So I thought for the first podcast I'd actually, up it a little and get Busch Light bottles.
Oh yeah, fancy.
Yeah, it's a little bit more
There you
high
go.
class than can.
Yeah.
But then the label comes off immediately as you put it into the refrigerator. So
What are you going to do? They're meant to be drank, not looked at.
right, exactly. It still tastes really good. But yeah, for the most part, anything else you guys wanted to bring up that we're kind of going to discuss throughout I think we're going to have a fun topic too, called Tales on the Lake or Tales of the Lake. And it's just kind of crazy stories that have happened on the lake to any of us, or I'll probably post on the BassHeads to have you email me a crazy story that we can talk about on here too.
Yeah, and I think
that would be good, just getting stuff from people.
Yeah,
we all have a bunch of connections, right? So we can, we could leverage some people, get some guests on, key guys, like it's, whoever it might be, tournament guys, industry guys, or whatever. So we'll definitely have a lot of guests and stuff like that. And, like Tony talked about, kind of local tournaments, we're going to touch them all. But if somebody goes out and catches 5 largemouth for 27 pounds in Minnesota, we're going to talk about it, right? We're going to try and get that guy on, and we're going to figure out what the heck's going on, right? So we're going to do the best we can to just kind of touch on some of those high level stuff to make sure we're covering that.
Yeah, I would say, I think it's just cool. I had been mentioning to Tony, I think this is a good idea we've all kind of seen Teal's podcast is great and doing really good and everything. And he talks to a lot of the top end guys in Minnesota. You get to really dive in with them. I think what'll be really cool here is, getting some of the guys who win or do well that are, maybe not as well known in the state. On that, you get to learn about guys winning champions tours or team trails or whatever big tournaments happening. So there's always stuff happening in Minnesota. And I think it's good to finally have a spotlight on this state rather than just another podcast talking about literally everything that everybody else is talking about.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't think there's not necessarily anything that's specifically Minnesota bass fishing.
No.
So that's
But
what we're going to try to do.
Maybe we can raise enough money for Nick to get lights in his house too.
Hold on.
Keep going in and out. Look at
That's better.
There he is.
The sunset.
Right.
Changed quick,
Natural light
man.
is gone.
We started this, it was light out.
Sunset's about 8 o'clock.
Got it. Kind of got that feeling of summer again when it was light
Right.
out at 7:15 or whatever.
Right.
No, I think it's cool as well. So with BassHeads, obviously it being a Facebook page, everyone's been getting their Minnesota information, through that source with posts and text, but bringing that to the visual and audio world, I think that's going to be pretty cool to kind of bring those to light in just another forum. So I'm excited for that part of it as well. Because I personally don't have all the time in the world to go on Facebook and check what's going on. And some of those posts can get, down in the feed pretty far before I even see it. But here it's like you have a bi-weekly show that you can tune into and kind of get the highlights. So that part's exciting as well.
Right.
Yeah, we'll try and do some live stuff. Like we've thrown around the idea. I know a few of us are going to be up on Mille Lacs for opener and stuff like that. Trying to do maybe we do something at a bar or something live where we have some guests and stuff like that. So we're gonna play around with those ideas. But maybe we do one from some of the high level people that support us, stuff like that. So it'll be cool. We'll move it around too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, the live show from the BassHeads house.
Right.
That's gonna be a can't miss episode.
Right before the BassHeads Derby.
Oh yeah,
that could be.
After,
I mean,
right after I take all your money in poker.
Black cherry, baby. It's not
don't tell the FCC because it's
yeah.
For sure.
Speaking of the BassHeads Derby, so I wasn't there last year because I was busy. I had to do a photo shoot.
Dude, you missed out, dude.
Well,
that was
I would like
so
to hear
fun,
about it
dude.
just because I would argue I'm not a huge fan of lakes that fish small, and I was out there for the team trail championship. If you don't know where we're talking about, it's Big Stone Lake. But I was out there for the team trail championship, and I thought that place fished tiny. Like if you got on a good hole, it was really good and a lot of fun for people. But my experience was different. So I'm curious to hear what you guys thought about it.
Yeah. So, we went in, I went in kind of thinking about that, is this going to fish small? Is this going to be just a cluster of boats around each other on some of those well-known areas? And that was not the case. And I talked to quite a few guys, and some of them that had actually fished the team trail there, and they're like, this lake completely changed. And it was just like 2 weeks prior to that the team trail was there. And
no, it was like a month. We were the end of August. Yeah.
Were you end of August? Okay.
Yeah.
So
it must have been a summer deal where all our fish were just in one area because they were.
Yeah. I mean, they were, I knew guys that were way up north catching them, and there were guys way down south catching them, and everywhere everywhere in between. But you did have to find a school, because I did talk to a few guys, that made the top 20, but they caught like 8 fish all day. Me and Brent probably caught 50 or 60 fish. Mm-hmm. It was crazy. Like me, and it's crazy because one of the areas that we started on was a well-known area, thinking it was going to be packed with boats, and there was 2 of us there, and that was it. As far north as we could see, as far south as we could see, it was just us 2. And it was Mike Moore, Matt Gilbertson, I don't know, 100 yards away from us, Brent.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
And we were trading fish left and right all morning long. Yep. They're swinging them in, we're swinging them in. It was one of the most fun tournaments I've ever been in. We ended up having 25 pounds by 10 o'clock.
Yeah, 10, 11, something like that. I mean, we had
Yeah.
our first 5 fish went for like 12 because we kind of found these 2 areas and they're basically on the same piece of structure, but 2 different little kind of high spots or whatever they were. But and it was probably the hardest practice I've ever had in my life because like leaving 5-pounders in practice is impossible, right? I'm literally texting Tony. I'm like, I just caught a 4.5. He's like, you should probably leave. And I'm like, well, I should probably catch one more. And I caught like a 582. And he's like, well, you should probably catch one more. And I'm like, no, I should leave. And then I caught like a 527. And I'm like, okay, now I got to go. Like it's 8 feet of water. My jig's not hitting the bottom. I can't do this. But the 2 spots are really close to each other. But yeah, no, it was crazy. It was very particular, but when you got on them, you got on them. It was fun.
Yeah, that's what was crazy because that second spot when you guys were, I think you got your biggest, right?
We got our biggest right there.
In like 4 or 5 feet of water.
Chicken.
Yeah,
a chicken.
Yeah, the chicken. And we were probably 30, 40 yards away from you, and we were catching, I don't know, it was out of that school maybe 30 on a Carolina rig, but the size difference was crazy.
Right.
It's like
we caught close,
and you're catching
two of our fish. Yeah, 2 of our fish, our limit fish came off that spot.
Yeah.
You guys are like 50 yards that way, and then we had another boat 50 yards the other way, and they're catching squeakers too. And we ended up catching 2 good ones. But we were catching a lot of small fish though too.
And Nick and I actually had found that spot a year prior, right? I mean, we had when him and I went out there just to fun fish because we're like, well, the guys are catching 6-pounders. What are we doing sitting at home, right? So we went out there and we found that area, but it was really, really particular as to kind of what they were doing or kind of the stuff they were hanging on. But yeah, to Tony's point, our first 5 fish weighed like 11 pounds, and I'm sitting here like there was 5-pounders here 4 days ago or 3 days ago, whatever. What just happened, right? So our first 5 fish are 12 pounds, and I'm like, I'm panicked because the 12 pounds is like last place, right? So, and then we just, I'm like,
hey, don't be too mean. We only got 16 and a half.
Right, yeah. But it was like we just kind of had to keep going, and I took that, and we were throwing football jigs, cranks, or whatever, and then we just decided like let's just go up a little bit because it was this finger that kind of curved. And we went in. I'm like, let's just slide up a little bit. So we slid up like, I don't know, 30 yards or something like that, 20 yards. And I launched that chicken out there as far as I could. And at the end of my cast, I caught like a 4.5. I'm like, well, maybe they slid up a little bit. Netted it, put it in the box, called. Next cast, like a 4. I'm like, they definitely slid up.
Yeah.
So we moved up another 20 feet, spot locked. And then we, like within a half hour, we had 23.5 pounds. It's like, okay, we can calm down now. Right?
And they were all over 3 pounds. It was crazy the amount of 3 to 4 pounders we caught in that one spot.
Yeah, it was just interesting how the highest percentage spot on the tip of that finger was 2 to 2.5 pounders.
Yeah,
but inside of it was 4 to 5 pounders. And it was, that's something we figured it out too, as to the spot you're talking about, Nick. You guys are on the end and there was 2.5 threes. Well, we were up on top on that high spot and there was, 5.5s.
Yeah.
Right.
But it probably just plays onto like pressure too. Like I'm sure other people ran into them in practice. A few of them got beat and they just shifted, That's just bound to happen and changing conditions and stuff.
What's crazy is, we had 25 pounds by 10 o'clock, and the whole time it's the only lake in the state for green fish where you don't feel comfortable with 25 pounds. You're like, we need like another 5.5 or a couple 5.5s and a 6 to get ourselves up to 27, 28 pounds to have a chance at winning this thing.
Yeah.
And even at 27, you're not comfortable.
Right.
Dude, when we were there for the trail, like Hayden and I think we had like a limit for over 20 and maybe the first hour or two. I can't remember exactly. Probably around the first hour or two. And like, it was hilarious because we look at each other and Hayden's like, what does the scale say? I'm like 2082 or something like that. And I look and he's like, okay. And I look at him. I'm like, yeah, what really sucks is we have to call literally every one of these fish because they're all 4s. Like they're all too small. None of them are the right size.
It's a crazy lake. It's a fun lake, but it's gonna get beat to shit.
It's gonna get curb stomped here in the next
but
year. So.
The only saving grace for that lake is starting mid-June, late June, it just gets crazy weedy. Sometimes the weeds go from bank to bank and you can't even really fish. It gets completely choked out. It's probably why it's been so good for years, is like you can't really fish it that much in the summer, dead summer.
And even in the fall, it's in the spring. I mean, I haven't been in the spring, but in the fall, I've been in the spring walleye fishing. But in the fall, you can't just catch them anywhere, right? It's not as much as we say we caught 50, 60 fish. We caught 50 or 60 fish out of spots, 3 areas, like put the troller down, spot lock, and cast, right? So it was really, really particular. So it's not the easiest. Right. It has giants, right? But it's not the easiest thing in the world to fish. We found a few things that were pretty particular, and I'm sure you can go down the bank. I know the guys that got like second or third were fishing docks, and you can do that and have success, but other than that, it can fish pretty stingy.
Well, we ran into one of the teams that stayed in a house with us at like 11 o'clock. I won't name names.
The Cherry Windsor guys.
The Cherry Windsor guys.
Yeah, you didn't talk about James.
No, you just let the cat out of the bag there.
He doesn't care.
But we pulled up to him on a point, and he's just like, God, he's like, does this suck for you guys like it is for us? And we're like, well, no, we got 25 pounds. He's like, you're kidding. I'm like, no, we got 25 pounds.
Yeah.
So, it just.
And he's fished that lake more than we have, right? I fished it like 5 days or whatever, but he fished a team trail and stuff like that. And it just kind of changed. And it kind of like to your point, Bart, it probably had to do with pressure, where those fish were like on those high percentage deals. And then all of a sudden they get 30 baits thrown at them on a random Thursday, and they're like, well, I'm getting out of here. And they just slid up somewhere. So it just had to relocate.
Well, and I think the thing is too, like people, I mean, we had this talk after that trail event, and I know it's getting beat up, and I know a bunch of people are going to listen to this and be like, oh my God, I need to go out there. But the reality of the way it is out there, in my opinion, I don't really think there's that many bass in there from what I've gathered.
No,
like,
not with how big it is.
They're like, oh my God, 5-pounders everywhere. It's like, dude, there's a lot of dead water, and there's not a lot of great places for them to live. Right. And there's not like, there's no offshore structure. It's a river system with no backwaters, basically. Yeah, right. So like I don't think there's really that many of them in there, but that's kind of the thing, is when you do run into them on the couple things that they like, they're loaded. It is unreal. But I mean, that's cool to hear, like the tournament went that good for you guys. Like how did it go, like in town, everything at the house? Like where were you guys staying? Good community and everythking? I liked it out there. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, the house was great.
Birds on that lake. It was unbelievable.
Right. There were a lot of dead coots that morning of the blast. It was crazy. I mean, it was just a flock of coots, and you saw a bunch go down. But in general, the tournament went awesome. It got a lot of good comments from people. We had Matt Ness from the Nitro Tracker Boat Center do the step in and do the weigh-in. That's right.
He helped do the weigh-in last
God, man, that was fantastic. He did research on the prior 2 derbies and like had notes for almost every team that was fishing. He'd been like, oh yeah, this team has been in it for the past 2 derbies, and this guy placed 7th in the first year's derby. He just did a lot of research and stepped up, and it was crazy.
I mean, like that's what makes tournaments good. Like people going a little bit above and beyond is what makes big changes. And like the BassHeads Derby being good now, the Champions Tour being awesome, Team Trail, like it's a lot of people just going a little bit above and beyond.
And what they really went above and beyond is they had a release boat for everybody to put their fish in, and they took those fish out into the middle of the lake and dumped them.
Dude, so they didn't get awesome, because like if people are heading there to do clubbers, which I'm sure is also going to happen, a lot of those accesses are really shallow and have really shallow weeds. Like keep a boat in the water and like have your clubbers, do whatever you're going to do, but be responsible. Keep a boat in the water, take them out and get them in deeper water. Otherwise we're not going to have big stone. Like that's flat out what's,
and it's happen. Like 2 to 3 feet, probably 100+ yards out from that launch. So yeah, I mean that's obviously the best for the fish is to get them in a boat
but
and get 'em
that
far
they
as
were
possible.
super adamant about doing that. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that
Well,
was good.
especially with it that shallow.
right. But props to the Nitro Tracker Boat Center for stepping up and
Yeah.
hoping
Speaking
we
of that,
can
Tony,
do that again this year too.
Well, what I thought
Yeah.
was the coolest was it was like the classic. You drove your rig up right to the weigh-in.
Right.
Had your bag ready to go, put it on the scale, and drove off. I thought that logistically
Right.
was so well done. I don't know whose idea that was, but that was a good touch as well, where you could actually bring
Absolutely.
your rig all the way through.
that worked
yeah,
well at
I
that
thought,
access too.
Yeah.
I'll call him the MC. What was his name again?
Matt.
Madness.
He just
Yep.
knew, yeah, like you said, every statistic. He knew like Matt Lee. Not everyone knows who your brother is.
Right.
He's like, hey, Tony's brother, Matt Lee. It's just like
Right.
little things like that.
Always
that go a
feels
long
good
way.
beating him though.
If you drink Bush Light, you know who he is.
Yes.
Dude. Oh man, Bart, was that was you? That
Yeah.
was you.
Bart-
We're gonna hold that. If you show up at the BassHeads house again, we're gonna hold you to that bet.
The case
I
race,
don't know
dude.
if I can do
Case
that
race.
anymore.
Oh,
I don't think you could have done it
years
then.
ago.
2 years ago.
I don't think you could have done it then. At
I
least
don't
not
think so
against
either,
him.
but I at
No.
least like to bring him, bring it up to him. But
Right.
I'm not going to ask the Rock to arm wrestle either. So
yeah, I don't know. We can have a good time one night. Him and I mean, one day him and I will just sit down. We'll just see how it ends, just for good fun.
So that's the
I
nice
like
thing
it.
about nice thing about the Derby this past year and going forward is Saturday. So there's always Saturday night, right? And
Right.
granted, we're all burnt out,
Right.
but we went bowling actually that night, and I
Right.
broke my toe. Funny enough, bowling, it was great. But we went bowling that night, and it was just a nice time to hang out, relax, and not have to worry about getting up super early the next day or whatever. So that was a super cool deal.
Well, and it's
Those-
funny
yeah,
because
Those beers
we're
taste even
complete-
just a
Right.
little bit better
right. Well,
after a
I
full day of fishing.
me, I'm the first one in bed every single
Yeah.
time.
There's that.
Tony
But-
never stays up.
No, I don't. But I made it till like midnight that night, 11
Mhm.
o'clock midnight. And then I get up the next morning and I'm like, Garfield walks by and I'm like, hey, what time did you guys call her quits last night? I don't know, like 4. And I'm like, are
Yeah.
you kidding me? That's like 3
Yeah.
nights in a row.
Right.
Like that can't happen.
They got
My
to
body
that
can't
handle of
function
Cherry
like that.
Windsor.
Yeah,
Mhm.
dude, they got to finish the handle. He's not going to bring it home.
Right.
Well,
Like,
I remember the last thing not last thing I remember, but I remember waking up that morning and Nick, you stayed up with them, and you before you went to bed, you took a sleepy gummy, and that was at like 5 a.m. and you're like, dude, that gummy's still hitting me right now. It was like 9 a.m. So you took it like 3 or 4 hours ago. But you had to drive home, you know that, right?
I don't
thing you
recommend
didn't get pulled over.
getting twisted at
Right.
4 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
no,
But
Tony,
you-
I gotta ask. So I know we're gonna get questions on this since we're talking last year's Derby. What can you give just a brief update on this year's, where it's gonna be, anything you know about it? I know registration ain't yet, but you're gonna get 90 messages asking about it, so you might as well talk about it.
So this year, the North Division won last year's Derby. And for those that are listening to this that don't kind of know what the BassHeads Derby is it's 50 teams split up between 2 divisions, North and South, 25 teams from the South, 25 teams from the North. And the border's 94 throughout the state. Top 5 teams from each division we add their weights at the end of the Derby. Whichever division has the most weight is the winning division and gets to pick the lake, vote for the lake for the next year. So this year, North won and they voted on Cass Lake, the chain of lakes. So there's I think there's 7 or 8 of them on the permit that we got. But personally, I've never fished it. This is going to be the fourth BassHeads Derby on a lake that I've never fished before, which is awesome.
Fish one lake.
Yeah,
well,
That's
that's
pretty much. I stay within 20 minutes of the house.
Right?
But
4:30 to 8:30.
hey,
You already said.
I mean, talking to a guy who's fished a lot of tournaments around this state in the last 5 to 10 years, I
Right.
haven't fished cast.
Right.
So
Right.
that's pretty cool to me. Like, I'm excited to go up there.
I
right.
might have vacationed there a couple times.
Brent might have fished it a couple
I
times.
might have been there.
But I've talked to some guys that fish it and are from up in that area, and they're excited about it because there are some big fish in that system. But it's kind of a feast or famine thing. It sounds like on that lake, it's like you either found them or you're in some trouble,
Mhm.
So, which is, I love those type of derbies. I think it's going to be perfect. I think, what's the lodge? Is it called Stony Point?
Yeah. Yep.
That sounds about right.
So we reached out to them. It sounds like that's the best place to host derbies, and they do some of the bigger walleye derbies up there.
Okay.
And I reached out to them, and they're all open for it. So we will be launching and doing the weigh-in out of Stony Point up on Cass Lake.
Cool.
That's such a cool part
at,
of your series, though. Yeah, you thought about that from the beginning, right? I mean, the fact that the winning, first off, to split it into divisions,
right,
and then have that winning side vote for the lake the next year. I mean, that's such a cool part about the series.
Yeah, and that was, Greg Ruff was the original tournament director that came in, and I had wanted to do a big derby like this, didn't know what kind of derby, and he's the one that reached out and kind of wanted to do something a little bit different, and that's where we kind of came up with the two teams, which just adds a little something to it. Makes it makes it a little tough to get into, because there's a lot of guys that their tournament partners are from the South, or their tournament partners from a different division. So it is tough to get into. Like I said, I think the South division filled up in 27 seconds last year. The North division had one spot open, and filled up in like 15 minutes or something like that. But this year, I think there was 6. So we let 20 teams pre-register. The top 20 teams from the prior year's tournament get to pre-register. And I think it might be like 14 of the 20 teams are from the North. So there's not going to be a whole lot of North spots open to get into this derby. So, but there are going to be quite a few South.
I'm good with anybody
there.
I'm good with anybody who works at Northland not being allowed in the tournament. That sounds like
right.
Nobody
if your
with
last
the
name's
last name Peterson.
If your last name is Peterson, you're omitted. It's not going to work out.
Yeah, sorry, Jace, Charlie, you're gone.
I talked to Mike Anselmo. He works. He's the marketing director up for Bagley Northland, and he said when we announced Cass, those guys were very excited, and I'm like, well, let's just pretend they don't know about it.
See if they can get in first.
Yeah, they got 6 spots. How quick are they on the trigger finger?
Right. But I'm hoping like prior years, registration will open around June 1st. We usually do like a Monday night or something, 7:00. And it's just the old school email, and it's whatever the registration comes in order is what I take,
A little bit of Russian roulette. You got bad Wi-Fi. Sucks to be you.
Right. And it's tough because there were people that said they sent it at 7, and I had 6 others that came in before them. So maybe someday I'll get the BassHeads website up to actually being technologically savvy and we can register through a website. But
just do the
I kind of like the email.
Blackfish has to deal with theirs filling up in 3 minutes too, and it just crashes websites, and everyone gets pissed no matter what.
Right.
So
I think you keep going backward and get people to camp out in front of your house for weeks before. I think we go backwards.
I think we go Black Friday style.
Yeah, Black Friday.
How dedicated are you?
I like it.
We'll get sponsors to go out there and do seminars and stuff like that. It'll be a whole event.
Right. But yeah, it should be a really good
light. I'll be out there for a week. I don't care.
There we go. No, it should be a really good time. I'm really excited to head to the North Country. I mean, that's up there. It's a really pretty area, so it'll be a lot of fun to fish. Get your frog rod out.
Yeah, it's a super cool chain. I mean, to your point, it's a lot of it reminds me of if you took leech and took away the smallmouth aspect, right? But I mean, there are some smallmouth in Cass, but it's tough to find them. But no, it's a super fun reeds, pads, rice, docks, shallow weed beds, stuff like that. It'll be a fun deal. it's one of those deals like you pull up to an area and there's this 200-yard stretch and they're in like a 50-foot area, right? Just like everywhere else, but it's a shallow deal versus a flipping deal or whatever. So it'll be super fun.
Yeah, nice. But as of sponsors wise, right now we got the same sponsors have agreed for this year. I'm going to reach out to a couple more people, hopefully grow the total jackpot. I'm going to keep the first place at 10K though, and just try to raise up some of those lower places, second and third, try to get that payout a little bit higher. Yep. So I'll continue working on that. But hopefully June 1st, if not sometime in June for sure. But yeah, that almost, speaking of the bass, since we're talking BassHeads Derby, that kind of leads into the segment of Tales from the Lake. This is going to kind of be the segment where we talk about something crazy that happened on the water or at the boat ramp. And one of the stories is from me and Brent, and Nick just happened to witness it. And it actually came from this happened the perch video, perch fisherman. This actually came from the BassHeads Derby on Big Stone. So me and Brent are on this one spot. Nick and his partner Reed are, I don't know, they're 50 yards away, 60 yards away. And this boat just comes drifting in. It was a ways out, and we could tell they were perch fishing. And the waves were just coming right into us. We could just tell that they weren't moving. And I kept asking Brent, I'm just like, hey, you think they're just gonna keep going? He's like, oh yeah, they don't give a shit. And I'm like, you're kidding. So they kept coming, and literally at one point they're like, I don't know, 15 yards away. And I'm like, Brent, do I yell at them? I'm like, do I say something? Cause they're right in the middle of where they're going to cross where the fish are, right where we're casting. He's like, no.
They already are on top.
They're already there. Yeah.
But Brent's like, no, for pure entertainment. Brent's just like, no, he's like, you gotta let this keep going.
Yeah.
And they literally drifted right by, like I could have like put my foot out and like stepped into their boat or like pressed their graph buttons, and not one time did they look up and make eye contact with us. They just kept fishing.
I was hoping I had a picture, but Nick, you may have the picture, whatever. We could
have a picture in the video.
He's got the video. Somehow. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Maybe hold the picture up, but so, and we're throwing out in front, and these guys are just drifting along, and Tony wanted to say something like, not worth it, dude. It's just, these guys are oblivious to what's going on. And there's the boat's sideways drifting towards us. We're sitting here and the boat's coming sideways, right? And the guy that's sitting by the steering wheel, jigging for perch, looks back, sees us, says something to the guy in the front of the boat. The guy in the front of the boat goes like this, looks back, is like, and just keeps going. Like he knows they're going to basically run into us. One good easterly gust of wind, and they're into our boat.
Of course, the guy who has it is the guy with the pixelated Wi-Fi camera.
But you can see. That's the nose of our boat.
So we're on the left there.
You can.
We're like literally right there. I don't know why I don't have that picture anymore, but I just like, I'm in awe. Like if we weren't in a tournament, I would have said something, right? If we could drink in the tournament, I would have said something too. But if we weren't in the tournament, I would have been like, dude, are you kidding me right now? Like they were just to catch 8-inch perch, right? And I get it. We're just catching bass. There's no preference, bass or perch, but I was blown away as to their level of
not care.
Like,
but I'm glad we didn't say anything, because that's a story I will remember for a very long time. And at the same time, I'm not surprised.
We all wanted that to play out.
I'm not surprised it happened. Yeah.
And we're just, like you said, Nick's 30 yards away, and we're just all looking to her like, you guys see this? Are we in another world? Do you see this? Right? It was crazy.
And it shouldn't surprise me, because it happens all the time.
Yeah.
Like going back, similar situation. I was just out on the river with a couple buddies. Was that last week? And we're actually fishing for some eyeballs, and there's a boat I don't know, 30 yards away from us catching some fish. And we're kind of casting at the same current seam. And we're talking back and forth with this other boat. And along comes another boat down the river, pulls right in between us. And we're just like we can no longer make our same cast because he is sitting right on top of the current seam where the fish are. And they start vertical jigging.
Dude,
It's
that's
just
just like it's something with other species, not bass fishing, that like
right.
it's just unreal how it's like, it's a community thing, you know.
Right.
You're like, what?
Yeah, it's kind of like accepted in that world.
Yeah.
Whereas
But-
like bass fishermen were like, what's going on? We blast them sometimes on bass heads, but yeah, it just seems like it's a lot more common. You're right.
But I've
Especially in
learned
the
just it's not even worth saying anything anymore.
No.
You know, I'm just out there trying to enjoy myself. Like I don't need to get upset. I don't need to get them upset. Just whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah.
I'm still
But-
looking for the picture. I'll post it. It's
Right.
I mean, I have a picture.
Post it in the comments of the podcast when Tony posts
Yeah.
a video or
I
whatever.
mean, I have
There you go.
a picture,
Right.
but it doesn't
Yeah.
do it justice.
No.
No, it doesn't. I have one like from the boat. I don't know.
From
the
But
boat view.
anyways, yeah,
All right.
it's like from my pocket. I'm like, hey, they didn't know. I mean, I could have
They
been
weren't
naked,
looking.
and they would have no idea. They didn't care.
Right.
Like they weren't even looking at us. Like I
The
could.
fact
I
that
just
they
like
didn't
I was just
say
like,
anything is just
those-
priceless. That it's
That's
Right.
unreal.
so
that big.
funny.
No, like I can't believe they just didn't even look back and be like, "Hey, how's it going?"
Yeah.
No,
They just didn't say a word.
Nice day we're having.
Right. It was
and
perfect.
we're fishing for 10,000, right? Imagine, you look at those elite
They're
series
fishing for
tournaments.
8-inch perch.
They're fishing for they're fishing for dinner, right? Let's not get it.
Right.
So like it just makes you think of like those elite guys. They all have that happen. They're fishing for $100, $200, $300,000 and stuff like that happens. I can't imagine how spun out I could have gotten. Like I think it was just after we caught our biggest fish, but like how spun out I would have gotten, like if that had happened, like while we were catching them, or we had a little
Right.
lull there or something like that, or if
Right.
they. So it reminds me of I Falls Bass Tournament. This is quite a few years ago. My friend Ross, and we're sitting here, and we got 8 to 10 spots we're gonna hit, and we know that it's got to happen at some point. It's just morning doesn't happen. They start getting fired up in the afternoon and stuff like that. So we pull up to probably our third best spot or something. We'll start throwing a jerk bait, and we get our jerk bait about 3/4 of the way back, and there's like 7 big smallmouth behind our baits. We're like, oh, okay, here we go. Like, just calm down. None of them bit. Let's let them reposition, and we just spot locked up, and this is gonna happen. And let's just calm down. And as we're just kind of casting and kind of retying some stuff, like just letting those fish set up again, a houseboat. And so, mind you, there's 2 buoys on this reef. A houseboat crashes onto this reef. And when I say crashes, it bottoms like doof, 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 onto the reef. And it's like, okay, we're out of here. Like I can't imagine if that was for $100,000 if something like that happens. Because we had the winning fish sitting there waiting for us to catch them, and this houseboat just crashes. Like, never mind. We're out of here.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome.
That's hilarious.
Um,
Closest thing to that on the elites though is the St. Lawrence. Some of the videos from out there are pretty crazy.
yeah.
There's one in particular. Who's the mud hole? Is it
Lester.
Lester? Yeah, dude. Where they're just yachts going like within
Oh,
10,
yeah.
15 feet
Oh, yeah.
of them.
They deal
And,
with it all. I can't even imagine dealing with like those lakes down there are so dang busy. I mean, that's like having an elite derby on Minnetonka.
Right. Well, they had a
You know?
poker run, right? Didn't they have a poker run in the St. Lawrence last year? Like a yacht run, like those guys with those big giant catamarans and big huge boats that go 70 miles an hour. They had one of those last year. Those guys are just getting blown by.
Yeah. But anyway, so
It's just like a Saturday on Minnetonka. It's fun.
right. That's just typical.
Yeah.
So that's the Tales from the Lake for this week's segment. We're gonna try to do something like that. I'm sure Bart's got a good one, some crazy story. Maybe we can talk about that on the next one.
I got several.
I feel like everybody's got something crazy.
I got-
that's
I
happened
got
on
one
the
I can
water.
keep fairly short that I'm sure most people have heard on Teal's podcast.
Let's do it.
So when Teal talked to Chapman about the infamous scuba mask
Right.
incident, the scuba diver, ski goggles or whatever, scuba gear.
Yep.
I was the boat right next to him when he pulled up to his first bed. Like I was literally like he was 30 feet from me. Like so when that happened, like yeah, it was exactly how he told it. Like he was, for people who don't know, it was a bed fishing tournament up north quite a few years ago for fishers and men. And there was a rule, no floggers. You could use them in practice.
Just the night before, though, right? Like
Yeah, I think
in the
just
rules
where
meeting,
they
they're
come
just
out,
like,
it got
oh,
said at
hey,
the
no
rules meeting.
floggers.
Yeah.
Right.
So James was flustered about it, and then we all know Chappie. If you know Chappie is very competitive.
He'll find a way.
And he knew he was going to do top 3 in this tournament, and a flogger was kind of a necessity because at that point in time, you know, there's no live imaging, 360, anything. They're very hard to see. And it was going to be blowing like 30 the next day. But anyway, so Chappie swings through a Walmart, grabs some snorkel. That's what it is, snorkel gear. And we're sitting there waiting to take off the next day, and like I'm sitting by him. He looks at me and he's like, "Look at this." I'm like, "What?" He's like, "You think he'll let me use this?" I'm like, "I don't know." And I literally, like, he looks at the tournament director, says, "Is this legal?" And the guy just laughs and goes, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Okay, whatever." And I was fishing with Aaron Knott at the time. We take off, go across the lake, and Chapman's, I don't know if he talked about it or not, but like one of the cylinders on his boat wasn't firing, so like it took him forever to get on plane. Like the boat was not running optimally, so like we got over there about 3 to 4 or 5 minutes before him, and all of a sudden they come peeling in, and like Shirley yells at me like, "Hey, are you on the 546?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "All right, I'll take like the 528." And he just goes right over to the second fish I was gonna fish, goes over there, and I just watched. I will never forget in my life watching James Chapman just go with goggles and just grab the side of the boat and just boom right over the side of the boat. Come back up, thumb up, go back down. Shirley drops. He just smacks him, hops back up. Shirley sets the hook, goes over, nets it. There, it's in the live well. They're moving, and I looked at Aaron, and I was like, "We are so screwed." And, we actually took third. John Janicek took second, and then Chapman took first. But yeah, he wasn't kidding. Like when he got to weigh in, like there were people very mad. But he came in and he was like, I was like, "Dude, that was hilarious." And he's like, "It wasn't worth it." And he like pulls his shirt up and shows me, and it is just black and blue, straight across his ribs from leaning over that boat rail all day. Because there was like 2-3 footers up in that end of the lake all day, and he was just bobbing up and down in it trying to see him. But yeah, that was like, I was literally the first person to see it. He was right next to me, and I will just never forget the strap down goggles over the side of the boat. It was
honestly.
What is he doing? What's going on? And then also it's like, oh shit.
That's honestly one of the greatest stories ever.
Before the tournament.
And dude, like literally the day after that tournament, there was new rules sent out that said no snorkel gear. Like it was written into the rules.
You went from what is this clown doing to he's taking our money. All right, never mind.
Yeah, like I knew he was gonna do really well, but I was like, whatever. And I was like, there's no way this goggle thing will work. And he sure shit just right over the side of the boat. I was like, whoa,
that's awesome.
It was very funny. But
nice.
Major props to James for that. It's still one of the I still tell people that story all the time. It's one of the funniest things I've ever seen on the water in a tournament. And it was by a bass fisherman. Like it was legitimately hilarious.
Right, for sure. Well, we're coming up on an hour already.
We did it.
We did it. That's the other thing about this podcast. We were just going to try to limit these to 45 minutes to an hour. Just quick little recaps, give you something to listen to in the car. I think with the next episode, I think we'll start getting into like springtime patterns because we're going to be, water's going to be opening up in the surrounding states. We're going to being able to start bass fishing in the next week or two. I'm actually heading back to South Dakota next week.
We got some river tournaments kicking off in the next 3-4 weeks.
We do. Yeah, we got the St. Jude's coming up. Is that the first week in May?
Yeah, month away.
May 4th. Yeah, and that's the 25th anniversary, right?
25K for first.
Yeah, that's
So
going to
they're
be
actually-
awesome. So
I was at Capra's, and Dean was saying they're trying to make a ruling on that because the water could be stupid high.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm not too worried about it personally.
Yeah.
I was talking to Corey the other day, and I think it'll be okay.
Yeah.
As long as it doesn't rain for like 2 or 3 days in the next week or two, I think we'll be good.
Right.
When is the I've never been there, but when is the Okoboji Open? Is that coming up?
That same weekend.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
It's the first weekend of May. Yep.
Gotcha.
So hopefully we can, and that one usually kicks out some monster fish.
Oh yeah.
25 to 30 pounds.
Yes. Of green or brown. Like either one. Like, I mean, the size of the greens that have been coming out of there in the past couple of years have been insane. But yeah, hopefully, once those are over with, we can get a couple of those winners on as guests, talk to them too. But yeah, the next couple episodes, we'll just start jumping into like springtime patterns, have a couple guests on, and just kind of go from there. Once I post this, feel free to, comment on the post. I think I got it it's going to be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and then I will have it I'm going to upload the video to the Minnesota BassHeads YouTube page, which haven't really used. But I'll have links on the Facebook page. I'll post it on the Facebook page, and I have links to everything. So,
and what is our kind of? Do we have a real professional? Well, do we have a date or a day we're trying to upload each of these? Is it every Monday, Tuesday, or have we not decided that?
I think it's going to be sporadic because
we're going to try and do one a week. We're going to try and upload once a week. I think that's fair. But
maybe once a week, once every other week. Yeah, I think as you've realized, we've tried to do this thing for the past 2 weeks, and our schedules are just all over the place. So we'll jump on and try to record as whenever we're all four of us are able to get on. I know Bart said he's not going to be able to make a few of them, but we'll have some guests fill in, have some other people fill in. But yeah, let us know what you guys think, what you guys want us to talk about in future episodes. Otherwise, we can end it there.
Word.
Awesome.